because we're not fixing it. Day one.
I think we got it now. Okay, yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. All right, have a good conversation.
Thank you.
Hey.
Start. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Raul.
Hi, Raul.
Hello, Lydie. Hello, Lib. So this is Rahul, and I'm happy to moderate this discussion today. It is part of the Fireworks mentoring program organized by Teesri Duniya Theatre. We do apologize a little bit about the technical difficulty, but I am so proud of our staff that handled it. I could not have done it without them. So thank you to this wonderful staff. I want to, as we start this program, talk to you a little bit about the theatre company that's producing it, that is Teesri Duniya Theatre, which came into existence in 1981 at a time when discussion of the diversity was a reality for people of color, and it was non-existent in the rest of the dominant world. So Teesri Duniya Theatre was, from the very beginning, was formed for two simultaneous purposes: representation and social justice. We decided at the time that country was much more diverse in every aspect than what we got to see on the screen or on the stage. And therefore, any theatrical organization, any cultural organization, if it was monochromatic or ethnocentric, it was not reflecting the reality of the country. That was the foundation of the Teesri Duniya Theatre. And it was a realization at this time that in order for us to do our work, the creation has to start from locally here. It's a discussion that I will follow up a little bit later. But at this point, I want to take the chance to introduce two of our dramaturgs, and Lib Spry and Lydie Dubuisson. Their CVs are very long. They're really long. I studied them before taking up this moderator's job. And I realized that I do not want to take a decision as to what I omit out from their wonderful resume and what I include. So I'm going to give them the chance to talk about themselves a little bit and come back. After that, I'll come back to the discussion of the fireworks again. So we'll start with you, Lib.
Okay, well, I'm a director, playwright, producer, translator. Like so many people in theater, I wear many, many hats. And I'm dramaturg on this project, which has been an absolutely amazing experience. Listening to you, Raul, I'm thinking I and the wonderful, now very sadly deceased writer Shirley Barrie ran a theater company called Straight Stitching Productions in the 80s in Toronto. And we only did 4 plays. She wrote, I directed, we co-produced, and only one of them was predominantly white, and that was a solo show she wrote for me. And she and her husband Ken Chubb founded Tricycle Theatre, which is now Kiln Theatre in Islington, not Islington, in London, in Kilburn in London, and they brought back to Canada this total awareness of there are a lot more people in the world than white. So our first show was with actual garment workers, which we then taught in schools with actors. So anyway, that was, it was Shirley and Ken who taught me to think that way.
Yeah.
And this is a great opportunity to give them their due, because we were doing this in 85 85, 86, 87 in Toronto, at a time where people running theater schools were telling young, hopeful, potential actors of color, there's no roles for you. And so for me to be here a long time later, and to be working with some incredibly talented artists, BIPOC artists, it's so thrilling, I think is the word. And hooray for Teesri for doing it. That, I think that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Lib. Actually, I knew Shirley Barrie,
Yeah.
and have had a chance to work with her on a short project. I'm also aware of Mixed Theatre Company at the time, and also the Cahoots Theatre, which was in the
Yes.
work Fanks at the time. The reality is that, of course, they saw the future much more than mainstream theater saw, but also that the theater such as Shirley Barrie's and the Cahoots at the time were still a marginal theater. They were not mainstream theater, and that is not a very positive statement on the state of art at the time. So I'm happy that we have, they laid down the foundation and we built upon them, and we have expanded it and brought it to at this point. So we'll have some discussion on that as we proceed. Lydie, please tell us about yourself and your motivations and all the wonderful things you do.
Oh, motivations too. Well, actually, hi, I am Lydie Dubuisson. I am a playwright, director, a dramaturg, translator. My passion for theater is really comes from just representation, the importance of representation, not only just to be seen. I think that's how it started for me. It's that feeling and that search of where is representation, where can I see myself and actually feel satisfied by what I see. And for me, of course, that came through musical theater at first. So I'm also an ex-singer, ex-vocal director. I will always remember in my journey towards moving from music to musical theater to theater in itself and studying theater at Concordia when Raul came to visit at Concordia and said out loud what was not really said a lot, which is a diversity exists, representation of your own culture is important, instead of the usual, it's universal, blind casting, let's just pretend that there are no colors and it's not important. And that conference or that class where Raul was invited, to me was very important, because you have that voice in the back of your head, but you also have to get the grades, which means you have to believe the teachers, but you also have to make your own mind into what is art and what do you want to do with all of that university and scholar information about arts. And so from that moment, I knew that Teesri was a company that I want to keep an eye on, because it's not easy to graduate and then to work in the arts. And that my motivation has always been about how to be aware that what we see is important and what we erase is important. And that's why companies to me like Teesri, it's important, because to me it is putting light on what has been erased for too long. And I'm here for that. The playwrights that we worked with all year are playwrights that bring back to the surface themes, stories that need to be seen the way they need to be seen, not just raise interest and then be scattered and be presented by anyone or for anyone. I really like the idea that we can allow everybody to have a piece of that stage. And I love Teesri because it's allowing me to do that in multiple ways.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lydie. I want to talk to you a little bit about the fireworks, the origin of the fireworks, because in 1981, when we started, as Lib says about Shirley Barrie's work, and I came in touch with Cahoot's Theatre that had a program at the time called Right About Now. There was a mixed theater company. There was a broken English theater company in Ottawa, few of them. And at the same time, we were, as I said in the beginning, the stage was so populated by the sameness, and the sameness was also color coded. There was the same color, in which, if at all, there was a representation of people of color, it was shabby or dismissive. So the story became very clear that, after all, what are the actors of color going to do if they get to go on the stage if the roles are not written for them? So the diversity, therefore, should have had to exist in the stories itself, not just bringing the actors on the stage to simulate a character that is not representative of their identity. That was the idea with which Fireworks was started. It was intercultural, and it had a sensitivity to the indigenous theater. So I remember just before this meeting, I was trying to go into our old papers and realized that indigeneity and interculturalism was embedded in the mandate of the Fireworks, and it said that in order for us to present our actors on the stage, we need to create those stories of us as they occur here, not import them from outside, because that was good, but that was not giving an idea that we are creating the Canadian works. So the Canadian creation had to have been inspired and had to have been created on the Canadian land. So a greater emphasis was put in through the Fireworks program, as a part of Teesri's activity, which was grossly underfunded company at the time, on two aspects that were largely ignored: interculturality and indigeneity. In our very first incarnation of the Fireworks, we presented the work of Marie Clemence, Unnatural and Accidental Women. It was done at the Geordie Theatre, was completely full. We had to have people coming and standing in the wings in order to be able to see that play. And we presented 5 plays. It was phenomenal for me. And I think, so I began to ask others that, why did it have to be Teesri and no other company picked up her work? And was a great degree of vibrancy around that. So I think that if audience were to tell us something, that what is a popular theater, what are we hungry to hear, the example was right then and there. Now, we decided that any of those stories do not have to be presented as an exception or as an expression of exoticism. They have to be a usual representation. So Fireworks, the second part of the mandate was representation, and clearly what is social justice and political basis of the playwriting. Now, we opened the Fireworks to all writers, no matter what color, what culture, as long as their story was significantly intercultural. And I'm using the word significantly intercultural, meaning that there was no in the passing representation, it was real. So the freedom of writing was assigned to everybody, but you had to struggle to find a content that spoke to all of us and about all of us. And that was the basis of the Fireworks program. And we also decided that when we begin to create the Canadian content, that there was a lot of discussion about the Canadian content at the time. And what we're missing in the Canadian content is the Canadian stories in favor of the American stories. But within the Canadian stories, what was missing was women's story. And within that, what was missing was people who did not conform to the whiteness. So we combined all those things and began to create work through fireworks. And therefore, it was important to see the journey from creation to the production. Many of the work that was developed in fireworks have seen the production. Most of my work has come through actually all my work has come through the fireworks, and a whole series of the plays we produced. And as I talked to you, on June 10th, we will be presenting Oliver Coombe-Sitara's play Psycho 6, which was developed last 2 years ago at the fireworks, and it is going to go see into that production. That's a little bit of our history. So I'm happy to say that the field has reasonably diversified. I think there relatively more representation there. Still a discussion to be had as to what is that representation telling us, about community, about art and artist, but particularly about the community and the world situation that we live in. That with some background, I am going to pose a question. I think I should have not talked that much. Now, Lib and Lydie, what does the dramaturgy mean to you at this given time, a time that is defined with keywords, equity, diversity, inclusion, and most important, decolonization? What is a decolonizing dramaturgy?
Oh la la. Go for it, Lydie.
Whoa. Okay. Your question is very loaded, but to me, dramaturgy, and especially with the word decolonization, because, oh my Lord, what does it mean to write a play? What does it mean to finish a play? Who has the right to develop a play, and how long can you actually spend working on your play? These are all questions that I'm still debating what the answer is. But for me, working with these playwrights was to try to share that confidence and that authenticity that they need to keep. I felt like it was more about fostering the spark. I went back a lot to what is fireworks and why are we doing this with these playwrights? And for me, it was really the idea that it has to spark social justice. It has to spark a desire for action, for something real actually happening in front of our eyes. And when we picked those playwrights, it was because I felt like my experience would help them gain the confidence and the support that they would need for their work to move forward. I felt like they were artists that my experience could bring something very specific to their own experience, such as exactly how do we break boxes that colonization has put on creation? And when do we embrace them, and when do we, I'm trying to look for the right words to like mess with it, because it's fun also to mess with the rules. As artists, I think that's the role. So for me, it was really about, what do you want to say? Why do you need to say it? And how can I make sure that you do not forget this along the way of creating, of adding scenes, of trying to get to that word, that magic word, end on a page, at the bottom of the page, but how to support that authenticity, because I want them to be able to one day sit in that production, sit in that audience and listen to these words and know these are my words. This is my legacy. This is something I can leave behind and that echoes what I had to say. And to me, that's dramaturgy. Lib.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty amazing definition. I love it. One thing I'd just like to say is that in the inclusivity is age and ageism. And one of the joys this year for me has been that we have been, Carolyn Fay's play is exactly about that. And I think Well, in terms of decolonization, one of the big things is time and space. That when Lydie talks about breaking out, you know, unfortunately, most English-speaking theaters have to, because of finances, produce in a very short period of time. And often that also happens with the writing, because of schedules, because of, you know, it's announced, da, 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 da. And I think one of the things we really need to learn is to what I call marinate, to have the space to let the artists breathe and go away from the work and come back to the work, which the fact that we had 9 months to work with these writers was just wonderful, because they all had that time when they needed it. And they all needed it, and they all still need it up to a point in the future. But so that for me is incredibly important. The time we take, the attention we take, the space we take to let each person find their own voice. You know, rather than this is how you write a play and this is the way you should do it. But wow, you're going there? That's wonderful. Now, how about these 3 questions? So that for me, being a dramaturg is creating space for people to create what's in their hearts, what's in their minds, and to find ways to say the things that are really important and that they're passionate about. And time is so important there. So I guess how I see my role is as a mixture of like someone who holds space, but also somebody who kind of dances with them. That, and sometimes I lead and sometimes they lead. And there are times when I go, you really have to think about this. And there are other times when it's like, yes, go for it. And then there are all of those moments where they're sort of going, is it normal that I feel that this is terrible? Or, you know, and it's normal, you know. Just telling them that the journey they're going through, whatever their particular journey is the journey, is okay. So it really is this kind of, for me, this movement with them and authenticity.
I want to pull this question a little bit more, and thank you to both of you for your profound answers. But I think that in terms of my friend Ted Little, the head of the theater department at Concordia, used to say that we so often teach the craft and not the human development. That if the human development is associated with the craft, then we will create the complete play. And I think that I keep this thing always remember when I am writing, that it is about not only about the craft, but it combined with the development of the human. Now, going back to the word colonization and the decolonization, I think that when the settler colonialism started in Canada, one of the first things that it did, and for that matter, wherever it started, I come from India, and the it was under the British colonial rule for more than 200 years. One of the first things that the colonialists do is erase the culture. So decolonization means to restore the culture as we start the process of decolonizing. What that means is to have a very clearly a political agenda, have very clearly a progressive outlook, and have very clearly associate with the process of dramaturgy the notion of the class, gender, and human rights, the justice, the gender sensitivity, sexuality. I think that we tend to ignore the class and tend to ignore the race, and as if those things exist without the powers. But as soon as we bring into the conversation class, race, and gender, we have to talk about the power relationship. It's not simply expression of these three things, but what is the power relationship across cultures, across the differences, and the dramaturgical process begin to address and in fact answer to the power imbalances. That dramaturgy to me would constitute a decolonized dramaturgy. Would you two agree to that or add something to it?
If I understand well, it's as if, because I feel like I carry decolonization or colonization with me, whatever I do. I am a political body wherever I go. I will always be a woman when my voice is heard. I will always be a Black person when I am seen. No matter what I do, it's a political act. It's either that I'm submitting or that I am breaking or that I am daring something new that I'm not supposed to go to. Even when you said development, I still kind of feel guilty when I'm just playing. And it's part of my work. That's what I do. As a director, you have to play. There's the craft, and then you have to play with it, explore with it, discover things. And as a woman, who am I to play? As a Black person, who am I to, and that is, in that action is such a great moment. Whenever I approach, I work with some teenagers at a community center in Anjou, and I am aware that when I start playing and when I am in that mode, I am breaking a part of their brain that is saying that I am not supposed to be doing this. I am not politically supposed to be having that privilege. I should be working night shifts with a minimum salary and with minimum, like all of these little things, that's what I like. It's just a surface. That's just the surface. And then I bring all the baggage also of, okay, so why do we yell to change something? Why do we why do we repeat what is already done, but we want change? Which means we need to change our hours. We need to, to me, decolonizing is also admitting that, yes, I am a mom, which means that starting a rehearsal at 7 a.m. was never going to be an option at just like 7 p.m. But there is a very rigid structure that wants me to put everything else aside for a craft. So it's all of the, as a woman, as a mother, as a Black mother, whenever I go, wait, so why are we doing this like this? Well, that's not accommodating at all. Well, let's just change this. To me, every time I take that decision, that's decolonization of why are we caring about that old rule of 400 years ago?
Yeah, we need to change it. It's systemic.
Right.
Totally.
No need to be afraid of systemic. That's what it means.
Lib,
Oh boy. I think what Lydie said is it's constantly challenging the structures, the biases, the ignorance, speaking as a white person, is that we have to learn to acknowledge that we have all of those and be able to go, oops, what I call settle a moment when I'm working with my Indigenous friends, that I screwed up again. And it's so much of what is in us is is given. We think it's given, and that it makes us feel uncomfortable, and therefore it's wrong. Instead of which, for me, decolonization is about productive discomfort. Just that the colonizers, whoever they are, and the racists, whoever they are, etc., the ageist, etc., 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 the misogynist, we can go through the list. That part of what my job is when we talk about social justice, etc., etc., is to go, I have to look at myself. I have to look at what it is that I assume and start challenging that in myself and challenging that in my fellow colonists. And that is our job as decolonization.
It's amazing. The word productive discomfort. It's okay. We need some work to do on that and develop that. Thank you very much. It's wonderful. I want to move on. Both of you, for a period of 9 months or little over, worked with 8 wonderful playwrights. They represented the country. If you go see the streets, you will find them on the street. And so they represented our country as a group and as individuals. That combination of individuality and collectivity existed in the group of 8 people that you nurtured for a period of 9 or so months. What does it meant, the mentorship, what did this mentorship mean to you over this period? How it started, how it evolved from your point of view, from the playwright's point of view?
I would say it started even before we met them. I mean, a lot of people wanted to do this, and we read all the submissions and the different extracts of plays and stuff. And the first thing was the conversation, who do we want to invite into this group? Who do we think are ready to go through a 9-month process and be sort of open to the journey and the adventure and the challenges? And that, I think that was wouldn't you say, Lydie, that was the first step?
Definitely, like choosing that, God, it's, you accept this type of challenge of like, okay, we're going to mentor and find new playwrights. But picking, that was such a, that was definitely the beginning
Right.
of the process, because finding, and we met, I think we met most of them because we received, there are so many voices that want to be heard. We received a lot of beautiful referrals. Like sometimes we had to let them know that please make sure that you try again, make sure you apply to these other places, because we knew that we could not accept everyone. We could not accept everybody. And once we picked them, I'm picking up from where you started, Lib, but then it's the fear of failing them, of like, now I have to get them somewhere.
Yes.
But that was the beauty of the learning process, because I kept going back, okay, if I'm writing, what do I need when I'm writing, and what would they need? And you start to get to know them, and we both have different methods, Lib and I, but I think it's about making sure that getting to know them so that you understand, how can I get them to that finish line? Because I've been a school teacher. When you have that whole class in front of you, yes, you have all the same resources for all the students, but you know that the books are going to get to them more, some it's more the board, more. You have to have those different tactics with all of them. And what an honor to get to know 4 artists as closely in 9 months, and to just make sure that they grow like towards the sun. Basically, it's like guide them to the sun.
What I would add to that was the support they gave each other. I mean, it wasn't it we because we didn't just work one-on-one. We met twice a month with all. We had 4 each, and we met our cohorts twice a month. And the support they gave each other, and the questions they asked, and their responses to readings that happened were just as important as anything that we did.
Yeah.
That was really exciting for me, was just to see how you know, and here we are on Zoom doing this. So it wasn't as if we were in a room together. We were spread across the country. And that support was as important. And I think part of the job of mentorship is to create an atmosphere, again, a container, create the space that can happen, that's part of your job.
I kept repeating to them that a big part of the mentorship is the privilege of that circle, of knowing that every month, twice a month, like every other week, we get to sit together, how you're doing, and we get to write together, work together. That, and yeah, when we met last week, it was like, oh, this is the last time, and promising to each other that we're not going to forget about each other because it's over. We're going to be able to email because we create a network. It's a network. Right. When you do a mentorship program, it's a network that you get to carry for the rest of your life. They became friends. They became family. They now definitely they are each other's fans. They're carrying each other. Yeah. That it's a beautiful gift. You can kind of see it because we've been part of mentorship programs, but when you're nurturing that circle, it's really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I don't live in Montreal, and my first time back in Montreal was in March, and instantly we got together. I mean, and it's definitely it's more than just being a mentor. It's one of the things about it that's been so wonderful is that the creation process of their creation has also been a creation process of for me, I think for Lydie, right, that you're just watching them and finding, you know, talking to this person this way and this person this way, and finding the question for this person that will clarify something you've been trying to articulate and failing, and then oh wow, yes, suddenly the gates open and there's a whole. I mean, one of the writers I was working with was as we were coming close to this, she sent her final draft, and I thought it was the one she'd sent me the week before, so I didn't really look at it. And then I read it, and it was like, oh my God, complete rewrite of the end. This is wonderful, you know, and to watch that bravery, it has been wonderful.
This is great. I think that the lesson that is coming out of it is, I had asked this question one time to my friend Paul Lafave, that what does dramaturgy mean to you? And he says that there was no particular definition other than a commitment from the dramaturg to the playwright, to live through the entire life of the play. Now, I know that I have been in a relationship for the development of my play with Lib, and we have stretched it many months. And what I cherished most about is that longer the process got, better the script became. So that long-term commitment. And I'm using the word commitment, just not that length, but also working towards it, has been one part of the relationship between the playwright and the dramaturg. And thank you very much, both of you, that you went through entire duration with these playwrights who all came from different stages of their individual development.
Right.
They were members of the community. Some of them were not even the part of the artistic community. They came from other fields and created quite a wonderful work. So that was great, fantastic. Landscape, the theatrical landscape. How do you see theatrical landscape changing?
It is changing.
Slowly.
I don't think theater has a choice to change at this point. I think there are too many artists who are just doing, and theater is like we would have to shut a lot of voices down for theater not to change, not to move forward. What I'm seeing is that there is a desire of really finding our voices, finding new things to say, which means that there's a new need for like this awareness that has started. It's not stopping for many. And I feel like that is going to be very interesting to see how it changes the landscape of what we see on stage, but how we design, how we're, like before we were not talking about what happens to the set after the set, but now there's more of an awareness of like, what do we do with all of that waste after? What do we do with how do we take care of our audience? I am seeing so much more care about what we're doing to our audience coming to see us, not just saying like, by the way, you may feel things and then just like throw them work. No, if you are going to warn them, we're also making sure that we can support our audience, that we can support our cast. I really see that there's a change in the landscape because there's an awareness of it's not over just with the script. It's not over just with the presentation. And it's not over for the artists involved also. So I feel like we take better care of our crews, we take better care of our teams, we take better care of our audience, and we take better care of making sure of what is it that we want to say. I one of the things that I drill a lot with every time I would work with the playwrights is that make sure that you can stand your the questions after. The questions are going to come to you. So make sure that what you're saying, you are ready for the talk back. You know where you're standing. And those are all sorts of little information that I feel I did not find them back in the 90s. I that was not necessarily something. And that's one of the reasons that maybe I did not feel that safe jumping into an industry that did not necessarily care about the experience I was going through, but only what I had to deliver. And I feel like now we take better care of everything that is involved to bring that story. And hopefully it is not just received better, but it is lived and experienced better for more people also.
Lib, you have...
Well, I think one of the things that needs to be done and is beginning to happen very slowly is to get rid of the Massey report, which essentially created art, all the arts, how the arts in Canada became Canadian. And I mean, it literally says, and I know this because Sarah Garton Stanley is doing a PhD thesis about this, is that it said Indigenous culture doesn't exist any longer, for example, 1951. And it was French and English. That was it. So I think one of the things is that we actually have to start saying, look at who we now are, and let's rethink completely, folks, how we do this. And let's go, there's so many interesting things that are happening outside of theaters now, which are really important. And so I think what we need to rethink completely what theater means to us, and at the same time take what Lydie said about respecting the actors, the audience, the set, you know, the materials in such a way that we are conscious about what we're doing, rather than, you know, I'm going to the theater tonight. That was fun, yes. Oh, well, you know, oh, so-and-so was really good. Wasn't it? The sort of, and actually get people thinking about what this country is and what this country could be and how the hell we're going to save the world. My goodness, that sounds pretentious, but.
Yeah, well, I think that you make a very important point, Lib, about the Massey report, because the Massey report has totally messed up the culture. I just got a note that we have 10 minutes, but I see the watch, we have actually 5 minutes. So,
yeah, but I think we started late.
Okay, we started late. Okay, so this is because by giving the primacy to the notion of biculturalism and bilingualism, it basically translates to the primacy of the two cultures over all other. And entire dramaturgical process, entire constitution of even the central organizations such as Canada Council for the Art are very centralized to what was Massey report.
Well,
it has to be
creation of the
dismantled
Massey
because
report.
it is contradictory. It is actually very colonial.
Yeah, totally.
It was written in a colonial time. It was written from a colonial point of view, and it is maintained that way. And I think I dare to say that some of our senior artists of yesteryears who are phasing out now, they did not learn anything but what was given to them from Massey Commission, and therefore the world did not exist to them other than what was the colonial world. So to me, that point is a very important one. And in the process of the decolonization, we just need to open up and end the primacy of the two in favor of the primacy of all. A sharper question I want to ask also, somewhat along that line, that we have talked sufficiently about the representation. I want to talk about the sharper edge of the representation. Representation in terms of the display of our identities as it is written on our bodies. Yes, very much so, because it also is a power structure. But also representation in terms of something more than appearance, something more than physical attribute. How do you navigate the two level of representations?
Lib?
Well, I think one of the things you do is you do what Teesri is doing, which is provide programs like Fireworks. I think that's one of the things that's written, you know, that people's voices can get out there and can be heard. And it's not just that they're writing the plays, but that artistic directors are being invited to listen to the plays and being approached and being told, you've got to look at this artist, you've got to look at this artist. So I think that's one of the things that's very important. I also think that, you know, if we're going to have boards for theater companies, then who's on the board is really important. And personally, I think the whole business model should be blown up and some other model should be created. I find it very interesting that what's happening now is that instead of hiring an artistic director who you sort of say it's their vision and we'll accept it, that companies are beginning, not necessarily in Canada, but elsewhere, to hire 2 or 3 artistic associates who between them run the company, make the decision about what the season's going to be. I think that's a really interesting change that's beginning to happen. I also think it's 2 things. I think it's really important that mainstream theater companies who are now kind of hiring both scrambling in a way to hire the sort of the best known actors, designers, directors of color to tick boxes for the council. To quote Isaac Thomas, who is now the general manager at Belfry, to recognize that they can only do that because of companies like Teesri, because of companies like Cahoots, because of companies like Native Earth, who for years and years and years have worked miracles with very little, very, very, very little in the way of funding or support or understanding, and that there needs to be a sharing that hasn't happened between the kind of money that so-called main stage companies get and these smaller companies get. So I think that's something that really needs to be looked at. And everywhere. So I'm not just talking about actors and directors and playwrights. I'm talking about designers. I'm talking about administrators. Very important, administrators. You know, and that you know, at least we're beginning to see, you know, people like Mike Payette being at Tarragon and Nina Lee, who's going to be at the NAC. It's beginning to happen. But it's got to happen all the way from the top through to the bottom. I mean, there are more now than there were, but trying to find, for example, an Indigenous stage manager, an Indigenous designer was in 2017 anyway, I can't talk about now, a real challenge.
I think that is, it just leads into the question because the conversation is beginning to occur as a result of decades of struggle of equity, diversity, and inclusion, that how it might be impacted by tokenism.
Right.
That tick box, clicking the box for the survival of the company or for the involvement and the inclusion of the community. We have seen inclusion through inclusion of already established leaders at the top position, but we have to see it beyond that, which is the engagement of the communities in the theaters. If communities are excluded and only leadership is there, it's a matter of more what you call the sort of some kind of a royal relationship, that we have the right person on the top, but don't care what happens to the public. Engagement of the public is very, very important. So I think that one of the things that needs to be guarded in terms of bringing a true representation is elimination of the tokenism.
Yeah.
And which means the representation of the class, gender, the sexual identity,
age,
race, religion, age, the disability, all those factors have to be part of the inclusiveness at a level of the leadership, at a level of audienceship, and then we are talking about the true representation.
Yeah.
If I can just add to this wonderful recipe also, because when I was talking about this awareness that is moving forward and that theater just has to hop on it, I also feel like we need to trust the groups that feel unseen. Everyone that feels invisible needs to also trust and in initiation to start their own movements, because exactly those who are present have, unless you give a big push, there's no need to like, let's give you a seat. You have to create those seats. You have to create your movements until that movement exactly is like, it's too strong. We kind of find a way to include them. But I feel like the more we're seeing that we're capable, I've always given myself, I love working with you, Raul. But when I started team, I will start with female designers, female act, like I will try, because I know that it's possible to get only women from the lights to the costumes, everything done. And it's possible. And the more we're doing it, the more we're realizing that that means that it's not true. That's how you're deconstructing, is by forcing and really making sure that I really want to work with you, but I've just made a decision that I have to make sure that this, I'm including this. Like I'm focusing on, I want a team of women, or I want a team of Indigenous folks. And we have to stick to those guns so that we can finally trust in ourselves that it is possible. And that's how you can create those magical moments of, okay, and when you get that authentic group to dream together, and that you have something magical that you cannot recreate anywhere else. So a little bit of magic and trust and initiation.
Well, the reason I'm smiling is to give you a news. From 2004 onwards, this company, Teesri Duniya Theatre, has worked only with women directors. So I don't even consider anyone outside of women directors, because I've seen the wonders of what they do. And I also think the political necessity of their representation. And increasingly, our design staff is being gendered. So our designers, and so I think that right now I'm kind of a minority in my company, gender minority, and I also think that some of our male staff is the guys who are doing the construction part, building the set and all that. So okay, so but seriously, this is seriously, this is, we have to be compulsive about it. It's not just a matter of choice or quality, because quality is already here, but we have to be compulsive. We have to be affirmative about it, that yes, these are the people we need to hire. I think that in our audience constitute 56% of women. Representation of women on the stage is 26%. This is a report by Rebecca Burton and Michelle MacArthur. So yeah. So I'm coming close to it. I'm going to ask one last question from both of you, and which is provided to me by my wonderful colleague, Alessandra Tom. What have you discovered in the process of mentorship, dramaturgy, and where the two intersect?
The two intersect, dramaturgy and?
Mentorship.
And oh Lord.
Process of mentorship.
I think a good dramaturg is in fact a mentor. Personally, I think that I know of people who dramaturge who are much too much involved in the writing of the play. And I have to say, as a dramaturg, it can be very tempting to do that. But I actually think the job of a dramaturg is to mentor. All the things we were talking about at the beginning is to giving them the space and the support to do whatever it is that they, as playwrights, need to do passionately.
Lydie, can you give us a short answer?
Everything that Lib just said, yes, dramaturgy, and it's probably my style, but everything that I know, I feel like I need to put it to the service of their dramaturgy. And as a mentor, like the mentorship program is basically giving them access to my friendship. Super
Yes.
Like a very fast friendships, or like I'm taking on over, and I will do my best to share everything that I can, so that I cannot be at the talk back like, oh, I should have asked that question to you, and I never did. That's my role, is to be able to prevent you to see clarity. So I think it goes with, the mentor is the dramaturg, and the dramaturg is depending on that mentor. Because otherwise it becomes, it's not my play. I need them to write their play. I don't want them to write my play. I'm already a playwright.
This is wonderful. You are talking about the shared ownership of the play.
Yeah.
Between the dramaturgs.
They own it. It's theirs.
Yeah.
It's theirs.
Amazing.
Right. I just want to say something before we finish, which is in terms of Alexandra Tonton,
Yes.
this project could not have happened without her. Her ability to organize us and
crazy.
talk to us and hold our hands when our hands needed to be held was amazing. And really, it couldn't have happened without her.
This is amazing because that is what I was going to conclude with thanking her for that. And it's not only that this program would not have happened without her, but most importantly, she expanded the program. She was to be a coordinator of the program, but essentially she became the artistic director of the program.
Yes.
That's
and
exactly
this
it.
was just simply amazing. From the selection process to execution process to the during and post activities that she did, I just have no words to describe it. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Al, Tom, I will work with you whenever you want. You are amazing, Al.
Me too.
Yes.
Amazing.
And so I want to thank you very much, both of you, for your such enlightening conversation. I want to thank all our playwrights and the 9-10 month of period that they spent with them and their script from where it was at the beginning to where it has come. Thanks to them, and they represent. Fireworks program is not simply a play development program. It is a play development program with a certain ideological processes. And those processes, as we talked about in this conversation, that really what it is to decolonize, really what it is to not just focus on the craft, but craft along with the human development. It is about the representation, but it is also about the value of the representation.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much. I want to thank
you.
my staff, which wonderfully organized this session. Without them, I could not have done that. And I cannot wait for the next session of the fireworks, which should start very soon.
Okay. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Raul. Fireworks is on.
Right.
Wonderful.
Enjoy the week, folks.
Yes. Oh, they're amazing.
Right. They are.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
So, how do I?
We just leave? Do we leave?
I think we can leave.
Yeah, I'm just, my colleague is going to show me how to switch this thing off.
Okay, I'll leave. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Raul.
Bye.
Yeah, okay. So just